Hey everyone, you're watching Conversations in Pop Culture, and I am your host, Andrew Davis, and this episode is brought to you by two sponsors of mine, BCW Supplies. Use Pop Anime Comics to get 10% off your entire order. Bags and boards are expensive, and I have a t-shirt that is up there as well. It's a Gundam t-shirt. It's on Redbubble, 16 colors. You can pick that bad boy up. And I don't want to bore everybody with my sponsorships because I have with me amazing comic artist and cover artist, Gregbo Watson. So welcome to the show. So welcome.
Hey, glad to be here. What's up?
Nothing much. I am very excited to have you on because you got a lot of stuff going on and your career is fascinating. But before we really dive into your career, I am curious how you got into comics because your journey is super cool.
Yeah, it's a weird one. I'll tell you that. I'm the world's longest overnight success story, probably. A lot of people ask me that question about how I got into comics, and I'd love to say, oh, well, I read comics when I was a kid. I really didn't. I read the occasional comic when I was a kid, but my parents actually took, I was always drawing, and my parents took me to a re-release of Disney's Peter Pan. And once I saw that, I was like, oh, that just opened the floodgates, and I started drawing. Now, I watched Super Friends and Spider-Man and all that stuff, Incredible Hulk on TV, but you know, in the old Batman show, you know, in the reruns. But it wasn't until really I was in high school when a buddy of mine had like a stack of comics. And I looked at the comics and I'm like, I draw this way. And these are these characters that I've seen in cartoons and TV and stuff. This is really cool. So I really started reading comics. And then I just went whole hog into it.
So what was that like? Because obviously everybody comes into comic books differently. And I haven't written anything, and at some point I'm going to, but I came in more as a teenager. Mm-hmm. And so what was that like? You're always drawing, but then you're like, oh man, there's an actual venue for you to do this, and this is my style. Because it is weird how people discover things and like, oh, I've always, you know, been able to draw Superman, but I didn't know what Superman was.
Yeah, it was, you know, it was really, really odd. It was great. I mean, you know, it was like somebody opening a, you know, set of French doors onto this beautiful heaven-like pasture, because I was like, oh my goodness, this is great. And you know, I've always leaned towards like the yeah, because I always enjoyed figure drawing. I always enjoyed, you know, and leaned towards drawing the females, but then, you know, I also like drawing the horror stuff and love the fairy tale type stuff. So, you know, it just opened so many doors for me, and I enjoyed it so much.
Yeah, to even talk about the fairy tale stuff, because obviously I'm a huge Zenescope fan.
Yeah.
And I make a lot of money selling Zenescope books. They got a virtual stream tomorrow. It's going to be fun. And, well, they take a lot of my money, which is unfortunate because I'm broke because of Zenescope. But that's neither here nor there. So, how did you come into Zenescope? Because they do horror very well, and they also do a lot of sexy covers very well. And they really do, you know, fairy tales. It's grim fairy tales. And so how did you come into working for them? Because you've done both cover work for them as well as interior artwork.
Yes. You know, it was kind of a weird thing. It was really cool because at the time I didn't really know who Zenescope was, because I had been doing comics since the 90s, but I got out for a short period of time because my son was born and I couldn't travel and do cons. So I was a creative director for an ad agency for, you know, quite a few years. My son got older. So I was like, oh, okay, well, this is my first love. I'm going to get back into it. So I just messed around and did a page. I've still got that original page too. I did a page just, you know, kind of seeing where I am after this many years and stuff. So I posted it, because back when I was doing it before, the internet really wasn't a thing, you know, to post like it is nowadays. Certainly wasn't an avenue to get work or anything like that. I posted it within like 2 days. The art director at the time, Anthony Spay, hit me up and said, yeah, man, have you ever thought about drawing comics? Because he didn't know that I had drawn, you know, in the 90s. And I was like, yeah, you know, that'd be great. So he said, well, I'm with Zenescope, and, you know, we'd love to get you to draw some stuff for us. Meanwhile, you know, I'm trying to play it cool, you know, talking to him like I knew what I was talking about Zenescope. So I started looking up on the internet. I was sitting there typing up on my Zenescope. And I spelled it wrong 8 times, like I think everybody does when they first get introduced to Zenescope. And I looked and I'm like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. This is right. This hits all my notes. Pretty girls, horror, and fairy tales. I was like, this is absolutely amazing. So he and I talked about it for a little bit, and that's how I ended up my first gig for Zenescope, which was Alice Down the Rabbit Hole. So I did that. I think it was like a 6-issue miniseries, and I did the interior pages.
So let's talk about that, because one of the things, and I'm a strong believer, because I know you a lot more from your cover work than I do from your interiors, but I am a strong believer that the best cover artists have done interior work. I look at J. Scott Campbell, I look at E. Bass, and I look at a few others who then have made the transition over to almost doing exclusive cover work. And I'm also a strong believer that you should not be telling somebody to do something that you haven't already done. And so what was that like, really doing interior cover work? Because I think it gives insight into the whole process of building out a comic, as well as saying, hey, I understand what it means to draw panel work. And not saying that you're better or worse than somebody who doesn't do panel work, for instance. But I think that it does give a more completist viewpoint.
I agree with that, because either way, if you're going to go into, as opposed to being a fine artist, the difference between a fine artist and an illustrator, and comic book artists are illustrators. I mean, art can tell a story, but illustration, the whole point is to tell a story. Does that make sense? Like, you can have art that's just your feelings or something like that, more representative, but illustration has to tell a story. And there's nothing better than interior work to, really hone your storytelling skills. But, whereas you have panel work and you're doing interiors and you're telling a story panel to panel and through the page, when you're doing a cover, even if it's just one of my pinups, I try to think, okay, I want to capture this moment in time, but also have a nod to a story, like where this person's been, where this person may be going, but then capture that snapshot in time. And I think that doing interiors, and then plus, like I said, I was creative director for an ad firm for years. So, I had a strong design background, and I think that helped a lot making the transition. But, when I broke in, there wasn't really, I don't even think the Kubert School had been established at the time. And so a lot of people go back and look at my Zenescope interiors and are like, well, where did you learn storytelling and pacing and all this stuff from? And everything I do, I guess, a little bit differently. You know how I learned storytelling for interior panels and such?
I'm sure you're going to tell us. I'm sure you're going to tell us.
I'm going to tell you. You're not going to stop me. I'm going to tell you. I'm running wild here. Basically what I did is I studied one of my loves, which is the old 1930s horror movies from Universal. Because, everything's in black and white, so you really can see the stark contrast. And it was at a time when people were moving from the stage in vaudeville to, the big screen. So everybody was overacting because they're still used to trying to emote to the person, like in the cheap seats. So, instead of something, today, if you try to learn by movies today, everybody's kind of subtle, like, yes, yes. Back then it was like, yes, I'll tell you, and doing the hand gestures and all that. But they didn't have a lot of special effects. So they really had to hang their hat on good, solid storytelling and pacing. And so, I looked at the 1930s horror movies. Then another thing I looked at that I loved was Twilight Zone. And that's how I learned storytelling and pacing.
Yeah, because this is so interesting, because I think a lot of people can actually learn as an artist and as well as a writer, even how to tell a good story. Because, and nothing against comics, but I find that it's hit and miss right now in the comic world for me, where some stories are great and some stories are horrific. And then I'm like, why did I buy this? What's going on? And indie and mainstream are not excluded from that. It's collective across the board, and not, nothing against anybody's book or anything like that. But some stories just miss. And whether it's the art or the writing, I'm not going to make a huge judgment because I think it's a collaborative effort. but I
Oh,
think a
it
lot
is.
of people need to learn how to figure out how to tell a better story. And sometimes even going all that vaudevillain style might work in a lot of ways because it just expressly clears it out, I guess.
Well, I'll tell you this, because a lot of people ask me from time to time about like the off the covers, but in which I'm more known for now. But back when I was doing, they'll ask me about my work back when I was doing the interior pages, and they'll say, tell me about one of my favorite collaborations, and it was Alice's 10th anniversary. And I had done a lot of work with Pat Shand before, and we collaborate really
He's been
well.
on this show. He's been on this show.
Pat's amazing. I love Pat.
Great.
And
Absolutely
so
great.
Pat is, I mean, he's a genius at keeping this stuff together. One of the coolest things was that I liked, and this is one of the only times this has ever happened, and I thought he did an amazing job. He was the editor for Alice's 10th. Okay. And once I was doing the story pages, he was sending those to the writer so that the writer would be in the loop and know. And then once I'd finished the colorist would hit them. He would send those to me and the writer. So we were all together in a big symbiotic. And it was just probably one of the best experiences I've ever had. I'm still talking about it to this day. And I'll never forget talking about the collaboration. One of the scenes called for Alice to be falling down through a room with all these clocks and stuff. And they had written just clocks of all different sizes. So I remember the old Felix the cat clock, where the tail and the eyes. So I did one of those, and I drew it like the Cheshire cat, like coming down about midway. And then Pat saw it, and he goes, "Oh, man, that's cool." All right. So then they went back in and actually wrote dialogue for the clock. And it was just all based on, us working together. And it turned out really, really great.
So what is that like? Because sometimes, and I've heard other people look at a book, and Max DeVille has spoken about this slightly, where it's the idea that the art is really good, or the art is a different level than what you were expecting. You're like, oh man, I got to go back and revise the story a little bit. And so, what is that like for you as an artist? Because some writers are like, no, just go back and redo the pages. And then sometimes even some companies are like, go back and redo the pages. But then some companies are also saying, wait a second, this is really better than what we imagined. And I'm not necessarily, this isn't what I asked of you to do, but it's better. Or it brings the story into a new direction that now that I'm looking at it is 10 times better. But sometimes also creators are saying, look, we don't have time to do this, or we don't want to get creative with the art you presented. So what is that like, that it come and said, hey, you presented a really good idea and we're going to run with it?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's really cool. I mean, I've got a really good example of that. Since you're a Zenescope fan, you'll know what I'm talking about. In Wonderland, obviously they have the Jabberwocky. Okay, well, when Zenescope sent me over the reference for the Jabberwocky, the Zenescope Jabberwocky didn't look to me. I didn't realize it was the Jabberwocky. So I thought, okay, well, that reference is missing. So I'm like, I'll go back to the original Tenniel illustrations and draw. So I drew this Jabberwocky, and it was insane, right? And so I got about 3 more pages into it and sent that page for approval. And I get an email from, I think it was Anthony Spade, and he goes, hey, you got to draw our characters to look like our characters. And I'm like, well, which one didn't I? He goes, oh, no, just the Jabberwocky. And I was like, you have reference for the Jabberwocky? He goes, yeah, I sent it. I went back looking through, and I was like, oh my goodness. Okay, that was the Jabberwocky. Well, I said, okay, I'll redraw it. And Anthony hits me back. He goes, no, because it was this big 2-page spread. And I was really proud of it. It had like a zillion little details in this thing. Anthony's like, no, there's no way I'm going to ask you to redo that. It looks great. We'll keep that one through this little series, but going forward, I said, oh, no problem. So I was like, man, I really screwed this up, blah, 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 blah. And so anyway, come to find out, to this day, they're still using that Jabberwocky, which is pretty cool. The Jabberwocky I screwed up and did.
So
So
you see, what is that like for you? Because one of the things that I really appreciate about Zenescope is that Robin hasn't changed, Van Helsing hasn't changed,
mhm.
Alice hasn't changed, and there's all these people like Ebass, I think, helped build out Robin. Pat
Yeah,
Chan created Van Helsing. I know that, and I
yep.
was unaware of that. So my Zenescope card might be revoked. I don't know if I'm allowed to buy anything from them anymore. After that mess about my show.
They're a good crew. They'll take care of you.
I don't know. Ralph might take away my Zenescope card, especially after he was on my show like
I
twice.
love Ralph. I love Ralph.
I love Ralph too, and
I
Raven
did
is
Death
someone
10th
else.
anniversary with Ralph. Ralph was the writer for 10th anniversary Death, and it was an amazing experience. And we actually did it. Believe it or not, we did it where, you know how you got to worry about the folds and the staple and how many pages and everything. After it was done, I'd already moved on to something else. Ralph hits me up. Ralph's like, "Okay, all right, we're 1 page short." So what do you mean we're 1 page short? And we were 1 page short for it to fold and whatever. And so we had to add a page in there. So that, you talk about collaboration. And I had so much fun collaborating with Ralph. But it was funny with my Southern accent and his accent. You know, it was like we kept saying, what'd you say? It was great.
I know exactly how that conversation went.
Yeah. Ralph's one of my favorite people. I mean, really and truly, he's a cool guy.
Yeah, I love Ralph. Ralph is great, and Ralph Spino is nice to me. He's been on my show twice. I've been on their stream once. I don't know if I'm ever going to get back just because my schedule is busy. But they are amazing, and it's always a good time. And I appreciate, obviously, when Ralph comes back on, and he's always welcome on my show. So if Ralph's watching this or he sees this, he's always welcome on my show. I want Joe on my show, though. That's what I really want.
Yeah.
But I digress on there. But I do want to talk about some of the covers actually that you've done because I like showing pictures. So
this one is interesting. The Van Helsing versus Dracula. I had so much fun with that, and this is funny. I've only for Zenescope. No, I've done a couple, but for Zenescope, I have only colored 2 covers, and this is one of them. And then the Alice 10th anniversary, a variant color cover, I actually colored it as well as drew it. But what happened was, again, all these things are my fault. I will go ahead and tell you, these all are my fault. So I'm sitting there, and they're like, "Hey, you want to do the Van Helsing versus?" This is when they started transitioning me into covers. You want to do the Van Helsing versus Dracula cover? And I'm like, "Well, sure I do." And so I sat down and did it, and then I started coloring it because why not? So I started coloring it. I sent it in, and I think it was Ralph. Was it Ralph? Maybe, I think. So whoever else knew, I think it was Ralph. He hit me back and says, we were just wanting like the pencils and the inks, but this looks pretty good. Well, you want to try your hand at coloring?" And he made some edits and stuff, and because I was a little bit too bright at the time, and he was like, "I desaturated a little bit," so I was like, "Okay." And so it went out, and it's so I have a special love for that particular cover.
So to even talk about that, because this is something that's fascinating. Obviously, Sanju has been on.
Sanju colored he colored the Minx cover I did.
So I love Sanju. Sanju is great. He's been on this show, and he's one of the greatest colorists.
Extremely talented. Extremely talented.
I can't wait in which that when I do my project, I'm gonna have him do the art and Michael D. Pascal do the coloring. Just to mix it up, because usually Sanju colors Michael D. Pascal's work, and I want it the other way around on my Kickstarter when I run one. Just to mix it up.
You're gonna really mix it up, aren't you?
I like to shake things up, everybody.
Oh yeah.
But I've obviously coloring is a whole different beast, and I am curious, what was that like for you to color and really even just do a little bit of that? Because a colorist can make or break a book, both interior and exterior.
Well, I'm not even close to claiming I'm the world's greatest colorist, but I studied painting. I went through school. I mean, I went through illustration, studied painting, airbrush, watercolor, all that jazz. So, I mean, I had the chops to at least, let's say, get through it. It was fun and I enjoy it, but I'm real happy in the situation I'm in right now where Gwen's coloring the bulk of my stuff because she's amazing. And it really frees me up to actually do more covers. And, you know, what I was having to do, this is interesting you asked that because I don't know if anybody else has mentioned this before. But like you were saying, it's a completely different beast, completely different mentality. Pencils is pencils, inks are inks, and coloring is coloring. So, you know, I'm not the fastest person in the world. I will be the first one to tell you. Sometimes, you know, I've got people, oh, you know, where is it? When's it going to be done? Where is it? Where is it? And I'm like, I'm going. I wish I could clone myself. I promise. But what I found out is it was taking me longer to pencil, ink, color, pencil, ink, color than it was like on, let's say, Monday, pencil, 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 then midweek, ink, 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 and then at the end of the week, weekend, color, color, color. Because I was having to jump, and it was a lot of creative stress, you know, switching hats and going from, you know, artistic mindset. So that's my thing. I try to do as much as I can with one discipline and then move to the other discipline.
That is so interesting because, you know, I guess, you know, I go in to as an interviewer, and I think it's somewhat related, is that I'll write like 4 interviews and then I'll go into editing mode and I'll go into cutting it up into micro content. But if I was to go and say, hey, that's what I like to do, have big writing blocks. Usually I write like on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then maybe on my Monday, I'll do some editing because to shift gears. And then I do 2 days of interviewing and then I go back to writing and then I go back to editing. Because if I'm to do writing and then jump to editing, it's going to be a very weird experience. And I find myself to be less productive because I could just focus in on one task. And I don't have to shift my gears. And so I find that to be fascinating because I'm very similar in certain ways, or even when I'm starting another project of any type, even if it's just something like, you know, I'll take a day off and I'll just legitimately watch anime all day and I won't do any work because for me to switch gears or even switch to another medium, it just messes with my head. So I find that to be fascinating.
What's this take time off that you're talking about? I've never heard of that. Is that like a thing people can actually do? Because nobody's told me about this yet.
Hey. If I don't take time off, I'm going to be dead in like a week. Like I need to take a day off. Like I am forced to by somebody in my house to take a day off. It's not a choice. It's not a choice.
My girlfriend kind of does that. She'll come over here and she'll say, okay, enough is enough. Come on, let's go out. Let's get some sunshine. Let's see what the world looks like. And I'll walk out like a vampire, you know. But it's pretty cool.
I am forced to take time off, but I do want to talk about another cover because I like this cover a lot too.
Oh yeah, Mothman. What was that? Van Helsing versus Frankenstein, right?
I think so. I think this is that, or it might be. I think it's either that or yeah. It has to be Van Helsing versus Frankenstein.
Sure. Yeah.
So, what's the story behind this one? Because I love this one.
Well, I mean, I love the Mothman. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I was kind of hoping to do like a Frankenstein because I'm a big Universal guy. But I also, me and my girlfriend, as a hobby, you know, kind of like her trying to get me out of the house, we'll go and do like a lot of supernatural, like ghost hunts and things like that. You know, with all the equipment, and it's fun. But so Mothman's like a big supernatural deal. So I was real happy to get to do that one. And I thought it was a cool pose, and I wanted to kind of make it a little bit less like big muscular type Mothman and more sinewy or whatever the word is.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's definitely, you know, darker. And I feel like, you know, it's a little like it's the nice Zenescope spin to it, I feel.
Yeah, I always try to when I'm doing stuff. See, here's the thing. I love all the companies I work with and work for. I always have a special place in my heart for Zenescope, though, because it's just like, it's like a perfect match because, you know, everything fits like a glove, and they've just got some really cool projects, some really cool stuff to do.
Yeah, and speaking about really cool projects, obviously this one,
Jungle Book.
Because this is not your traditional style that you do. This is out of the norm. I actually like this cover a lot. I think this cover is fun.
It's a unique one, and when it's laid out next to a lot, you're right. When it's laid out like next to a lot of mine, but I don't know. I guess I was just more in a Jungle Book because, again, one of my big influences. A lot of people ask me my style, where I got my style from, and I had to sit down and think about it. And I have a really weird combination of influences. Disney and Disney princesses and Gil Elfgren, the pinup artist from like the 50s or whatever. And it's like,
because this is just fun, and it's like a weird one. And then even to go down the rabbit hole, no pun intended.
See what you did there.
This is also like just trippy. Like,
oh,
this
spirit hunters. Oh yeah.
So like, I don't even know like how you even conceptualize this cover, because like you got a gigantic head for those who can't see it. It's like a head that's like holographic blue, and then there's like a Ferris wheel, and it's just weird. If you're listening in the podcast side of this, I'm sorry that you can't see it, but like this thing is trippy.
Thank you. Thank you. It's yeah, it's talking about, you know, conceptualizing it. It's just, I tend to like, a lot of times I'll listen to music in my studio when I'm doing certain things. And probably on Jungle Book, I was listening to the Jungle Book tunes from Disney. In this, I can guarantee you I was listening to like my favorite singer of all time, performer of all time, Ozzy Osbourne. And I guarantee you, because when I'm listening to Ozzy, this is the kind of stuff you get. So
this is like the Sick and Demented, and like the Sick and Twisted. And I had an English professor who would like right up his alley. Is this like stuff? And then there's also, sticking with Spirit Hunters, we have this one here too. And
I've got something interesting about this cover. If you zoom in, I don't know if you can zoom in there, but you can tell everybody that when they look at it, they can zoom in. But if you zoom in to right there around the mirror, there's a picture of like an old actress in the mirror. She's like an old picture, like she's got taped up to her makeup mirror, and it's got a signature on it like it was signed. And the name is Sarah Gentry, and that's my aunt. And my aunt did a lot of plays and that type of stuff. So I worked my aunt into that particular cover, which was pretty cool. There's some of the ones in Zenescope, interiors and covers, that I worked family members and stuff into.
So what was that like? Because did they know that your family member was worked into it, or was it after the fact? You're like, oh yeah, by the way, my aunt's name is in this cover.
I don't think I ever mentioned it to them, and you know, they didn't come back to me and say, well, what in the heck is this and why is it here? I think it just went under the radar. It may have, or they're so good to work with on things that they may have just been like, oh, okay, well, there's Gregbo, let it just die. Yeah, let it go.
Because it's kind of cool. And one of the things, and then I'm going to show obviously one more, and this is one of my favorite covers you've done, which is this one. And that's, I think, Grim Tales of Terror. And I think, is that Karis?
That's Karis. And was it volume 2, maybe volume 2. I think I did every cover of Grim Tales of Terror in at least volume 2. There was one volume where I did a cover for every one of them. And so I started out and I was known for Alice. And then when I started doing a lot of the covers, I did so many for Tales of Terror that became known for Karis. So,
because this is just like fun, and she's supposed to be scary and killing people.
Well, what happened was I had done a old school pinup, and I posted it on Facebook, and it was a girl dressed in like a Navy outfit. And Dave hit me up, and he's like, hey, that thing you just posted, we've got an idea. And he told me, and he said, yeah, let's do this. And she's sitting in the middle of the Bermuda Triangle. And I'm like, okay, yes. Usually when Zenescope hits me up, I have a very hard time saying no.
So let's even talk about that, because one of the things that I think is very interesting, it's the idea of credibility in comics.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a big debate where people on Kickstarter say, hey, look, I'm indie and I'm building my own name up and I don't need the big people to do it. And first thing, also, some people say, look, if I write for Zenescope, or I write for DC, I write for Marvel, all of a sudden I have credibility. And tabling the economics and raising your rates and all that stuff, or even getting, a funnel into you, I guess maybe slightly getting business into you. Once you say, hey, I used to work for Marvel, I used to work for DC, I did work for Zenescope, you start getting sort of clout. And I think you get a level of respect, especially if you have 50 covers with Zenescope, or you have 20 covers with Zenescope. And so what is that like for you? Because I think it does add some credibility.
It does. Well, interesting story. This is you ask these great questions. It makes me think of this. When I was getting back into it and I was starting to do stuff for Zenescope, people in my hometown. I live in a small little southern town, and they'd ask. Well, they'd see my art and, oh man, you draw great. Oh, we love the way you draw. Oh, you're so talented. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And then they'd say, well, what do you do for a living? And I'd say, well, that's what I do for a living. And then they just kind of look at me and do the, kind of like they all but patted me on the head and said, good boy, here's a lollipop, going about your way, poor thing, But once I did Alice in Wonderland, they didn't even know who Zenescope was in my little town, but they knew Alice in Wonderland. So all of a sudden it went from I was eating beanie weenies out of a can to a dump. They went to the opposite extreme, thinking like every day a big dump truck pulled up to my house and just meh, and dropped a bunch of cash on. And I'm like, it's hilarious. But in the industry itself, yeah, I mean, it starts to get credibility, and I don't know. I mean, it does, I guess.
Because I understand from just my interview point, where all of a sudden I'm interviewing people like Paul Levitz, Denny O'Neil, Chuck Dixon, and all of a sudden other names are like, yo, I want to be on your show. And I asked people before, I had those 3 people on my other show, and I wouldn't get a response. And then the second I start name dropping, you're like, oh man, I want to, be on your show. There's been certain people. I mean, I don't know who sort of sounded like the Hedgehog, but Colin O'Shaughnessy, who plays Tails, was on my show. And it helped because I got certain people's names prior on my other show. And so credibility to me is key in a lot of ways, where people treat you differently, more doors open. And I think it's a real debate, because I know plenty of people who are doing really well on Kickstarter and they're doing without credibility. But I wonder if they went to Marvel or DC first, what would their careers be like right now, or would it make a difference? And I don't know the answer to that, and it's not a knock, but I think it's a very complicated issue. And so I'm very curious, because you have a name in indie, but you also, Zenescope, I feel, is not the be-all end-all for you per se, but it definitely changes the game, where I know who Gregbo Watson is. And full disclosure, I didn't know you worked for Zenescope before.
Yeah.
But the second I realized, when I was doing my homework, I'm like, oh, snap, there's a different level of work here, and there's a different level of credibility.
Yeah, I mean, it's I don't know. I mean, it's wild. I mean, the things going on today, I've never seen anything like what's going on today. I mean, I was around in the late 80s. Well, late 80s, I was starting to read them a little bit. But then in the 90s is when I started drawing professionally. And during that time, Image wasn't a thing. It was just on the horizon. I was there when the big Image thing was taking off, and nobody knew what was going on, and it was crazy. You have the indies, and the indies back then were doing pretty darn well for themselves, but nothing like they're doing now. you know, now it's like more people are jumping off into reading the indies than they are the mainstream in a lot of areas. So
yeah. Even to talk about that, because I actually am curious, and I have my own thoughts on that, and I take a contrary position. But I'm curious, why do you think indies have gotten bigger, or do you think that they always were at that talent? Because I think a lot of indie books are at the level of DC and Marvel and even Image, but now they have a distribution channel in a lot of ways to actually thrive, and it's also the entry and the gate is a hell of a lot easier than it was 40 years ago.
I think it's all right. I'm just gonna, you know, as my son's a pro wrestler, so I'm gonna use the term. I'm gonna shoot with you here.
I love wrestling. I'm a huge wrestling fan. You know,
well, my son's a pro wrestler and an MMA fighter, so I always hear him and his buddies talk about, you know, the term. Okay, it's a shoot. It's a work. It's a shoot. Okay, well, this is a shoot. I'm trying to think of how the best way to say this would be. It's
okay. It's okay. However you shoot, you cannot shoot as good as Lufisto did on 45 Minutes on my show. So,
okay, yeah. Okay.
I don't know if you know who Lufisto is, by any chance.
Well,
she's amazing.
I'll just say this. I think that part and parcel of it is the amount of talent and the ability to produce, just because of our technology with the internet, promotion, the ability to produce. I mean, I remember I did a comic back in the 90s, and it was so costly just to get it even close to what the mainstream was putting out. I believe that's part of it, but I believe why so many people are running to the independents is, and I won't get into that part, but it doesn't matter what side of the politics you're on. I don't care. You just want to leave it out of the comics. I mean, you can hint at it, give it a good message. I mean, the X-Men always did, you know, back in the day, but it's gone from a nod and a wink to, it's gone from comics to like political pamphlets in some cases.
So I'll throw in, I don't know if you saw Sonic the Hedgehog, the second movie that just came out this weekend, but one of the things that I thoroughly enjoyed about the movie is that it was just a movie.
Yes.
There was no politics. It's Dr. Eggman's evil. He's trying to rule the world, and Sonic and his crew wants to stop him. And it was basic, and it was not political. And you know, his life is hard enough as we sit right now. And guess what? When I read Sonic the Hedgehog comics or I read Batman, I want to know the Joker has gone AWOL and he puts Batman in a impossible situation and Batman gets out of it, or Sonic gets out of it. And I'm trying to escape from an already difficult life. And I think with indie in particular, you know, a lot of people have flocked. They're like, look, this is just a good story. And of course there's politics, but it's just that there's a massive conflict that's occurring.
A little bit of politics.
We need to just figure out how to get out of the massive conflict, while maybe Marvel, DC, Image are all trying to, you know, do some messaging. And it's like, if you pulled back some of that politics, you would have a decent story and it would be, you know, tolerable, for lack of a better word.
Well, I mean, I have really good, I mean, heck, working in the entertainment industry, you know, most of it leans one way, but I have good friends on both sides of the equation, and we stay good friends. And that's one thing you don't see about me on like Facebook, social media. I don't talk politics. I'm not going to talk politics on here, but you can't have a discussion about why the mainstream comics are kind of not what they were, but independents are exploding, without at least acknowledging that that does play a huge part of it. Because, you know, you want to have fun with it. You know, I believe anybody who's an outsider can enjoy the X-Men and the message it gave, but it didn't specify every little thing. You know, it kind of made everybody feel included and that everybody could pick up X-Men and enjoy it. And the only reason I'm saying X-Men, because I hear a lot of people say, oh, well, people talk about politics. The X-Men did it way back. Yeah, well, yeah, they did. But, you know, they did it in such a way that was still enjoyable. If you do it too heavy-handed, only one side, whoever's writing it, it doesn't matter which side it is, I don't care. Whichever side it is writing it, it's only going to appeal to their side. And I just want to see things and do things that appeal to as many people as I can. I want people to enjoy them.
I mean, everybody knows my politics on this show, but it's not a political show, and the reason why people
I'm coming in fresh.
Everybody knows how I think, and it's no secret where I am very money oriented and I'm very business oriented. But nobody knows other than that, and people understand how I think in that realm where I'm an economic guy. Yeah. So that should give insight, but nobody knows my exact positions. Yeah. But people know how I think, and they know how I view things in a certain way where I have a very particular lens. And it definitely affects my political decisions. But that should give everybody enough clues. But yeah, everybody comes on my show because, again, we're talking about comic books and we're not talking about politics. This is not a political show.
Exactly.
There's plenty of other people who are much better at that than I am. So I understand that I can't compete in the political world right now. So, and I would like to make money doing something. So why get my ass kicked in something that I'm not good at. So
and see, that's the thing. I mean, I want to do cool things that people can enjoy, and not force my politics or force my beliefs on somebody. Because I don't know. I mean, if we're sitting down having a beer or something, then okay, and they ask me, that's one thing. But I'm not going to put something else like buy my stuff and listen to my everything. It's okay to put some in how you believe, because I believe when you're a creative, you also kind of have to put in your beliefs to find who you are as a creative, but tone it down a bit.
Yeah, I agree. And then speaking about a good company that tones it down a lot, there's some pretty cool stuff. We got to talk about Dynamite.
Oh, Dynamite. Yeah, I love Dynamite. Oh, look there.
So this is wow. This is
Gwen colored that one, which is amazing. Panther #1.
Yes, Panther.
And Gwen and I got hooked up and met after I had already done the Vampirellas, and I colored the Vampirellas, and she colored the Panther. And the Panther just has so much depth, and it's just look at the little volcano and all the stuff going on back there in the sky. It's just amazing.
Also, the Panther has a lot more background, and it also has more proportion where you feel the layers in. Nothing against the Vampirella.
No. But if you see something with the exception of that we saw earlier, the Van Helsing versus Dracula. Usually, if I know I'm going to be coloring something, I will more than likely not do some kind of crazy lot of detail in the background. And I know Gwen can handle it. Gwen's a pro, and I know I can do a background, and she's going to take it and she's going to run with it. So,
because obviously it's very cool, and then this is just Halloween, and I love Halloween. So,
and that was supposed to come out and be a Halloween exclusive, and we were coming out of COVID and all the little supply chain issues and stuff like that. And anyway, it got pushed back, and it ended up coming out like the first or second week in November. And I was like, oh God. But yeah, it was a Halloween exclusive.
And then I really want to dive into indie at this point, because you've done a bunch of indie books, and you got to speak about
indie stuff.
My friend Jim Noble and everything he does.
I love Jim.
So this is one of them. And for those who are watching, it is the slightly cut off image on one side of the screen. So that's that cover. And then this is the other cover that's cut off. Yes. And then there's this one right here that's out there. And then this is a fourth one that you've done. And I think you've done a bunch of others, but I don't want to occupy the entire stream talking about Jim Noble. And so
but Jim would love that. Jim would absolutely love that. Hey, we're actually he and I are working on Well, we've got 4 or 5 in the works, but one of the ones we're working on, I do Heroes Con in my neck of the woods every year down in Charlotte, North Carolina in June. And he's actually coming to Heroes Con this year. So he hit me up and he said, hey, let's do a Heroes Con exclusive. So we're going to have a really cool Heroes Con exclusive there.
And so I really like that cover. It's amazing. And then obviously really continuing to talk about indie here, you know, this is Max DeVille's cover.
Yes.
And some Mary Machine Gun. And this cover is just slamming.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's like I went ape in the background. I've got so many, you know, if you look at it, I've got so many little bullet holes and stuff like that in the wall. And I was like, Gwen's going to kill me. Gwen got that thing colored and she just knocked it out of the park. And I'm like, oh my goodness, that's amazing. Really brought that stuff out.
Because that cover is just fantastic. And that's really what Mary Machine Gun is about. This is the cover, what it's about in so many ways. And I think Max did very well with this cover. And then,
awesome. I'm glad. I love him to death. He's a good guy.
And then this is Alton's cover.
Alton.
And
I was on his stream when he was launching this. I think. Yeah. I was on his stream when he was launching it the night of the launch.
So this is something that's very, very cool in that regard. And I like this one too. And then this is the cousin to Jim Noble's cover.
Yes. Primal.
So very, very cool cover. And then this cover and this cover really belong together in so many ways.
You know, that cover that you're showing there is now my new con banner when I'm at cons.
So what is that like to do a cover and then say, hey, this is a really good, you know, cover, and then make it your con banner? Because it's obviously good for you because you did the work and people will see it. And then it's also good for that artist, or not the artist, but it's good for the writer or whoever owns that project. And so what is that like? And what is that like saying, hey, you know, can I use it? Do you ask, or how does that
work? I just did it. It was Jim. And then I told Jim after the fact, I said, hey, look at this. And Jim's like, wow, that's cool. But Jim and I collaborate really well. So I knew it wouldn't be a problem.
Because it's really fascinating. And then obviously this one is cool too. And they just
amazing,
go so well together. They go so well together. So what is that like to build out two covers that really go well together and complement each other? Because I think it is an art and it's also stylistic, because there are people that are now entering this where there are certain artists that I love. So I am a huge Ebass fan. I'm a huge Dalton Peake fan. I'm a huge Elias Chazus fan. And so if Elias is doing a book, I don't really care what's in the book. I don't. I mean, he just had an interview in Hustler magazine. I am not a regular subscriber of Hustler magazine per se, anybody, but he had an interview in Hustler. So I picked up a copy of Hustler because I wanted to read his interview. And so there are people who now follow Gregbo Watson. And so they might not know what a totally rad book is or another book is, but they're like, I just want to have this cover. And so what is that like for you, knowing that? And then when we go into something like this, where it's just sort of level 2, they say, look, I like this cover here and I like this cover here, and they're similar and they work well together. So I want to have both of these covers. And what is that like for you? Because that's a whole different ball game, because now you're hitting a secondary niche inside fans who already appreciate what you're doing.
Well, it's amazing. We stay pretty packed at these cons. And my con schedule, that's a whole different ball game, because down here in the Southeast, if you're willing to drive within 2, maybe 3 tops hours, you could do a con every weekend down here. And I had to pull back some. My girlfriend was like, she's an accountant, so she's put a spreadsheet to see how many cons we had done. Because towards the end of the year, I was feeling so tired. And I mean, we were having like 3 cons a month, sometime a con every Saturday in a month. And I had a hard time saying no or anything. So, but now it's just, It's surreal. You know, I take how I interact with the fans and how I feel about that from when I was breaking into the business. Jimmy Palmiotti was one of the nicest people, still is, but I mean, just this amazingly nice person. And how he talked with and interacted with the fans, I always bookmarked that. And I said, you know, if I ever get to a point where people are actually wanting to come see me at these things, they're the whole reason that I am able to do this and have a job. So, I mean, I go out of my way. So, I mean, I'm real appreciative of it.
So you brought up really two interesting points, and I'm actually very curious because con economics are fascinating to me. Again, I love economics, I love money, I love how money operates and even business. And so, and we're not diving into your personal finances, I promise. So this is everybody relax. But what is that like for you to make determinations? Because when you go to a con, you know, it is your time. It's time away from wherever else you're doing.
It is.
Time from you from watching television or working on a new cover or even catching, you know, sleep. And also being at a con, you know, whether you're sitting down, you have to sell, you got to put on a happy face. Not saying you're not happy to be there, but you know, after 16 hours of selling, you might want to tell somebody to go to hell. You know, you might be sick of people, and it's nothing personal, but I don't want to be around people for 16 hours, and I like people. I don't want to interview people for 16 hours either. So what is that like? Because time is money, and even making those determinations,
I mean,
and
those
also
are
paying for a table and everything as well sometimes.
well. Now, that's one thing. I won't go to a con if I'm paying. If they want me to pay for a table, I can sit back in my PJs in my studio and I'll be fine. But I usually only go to the cons where somebody offers me a table or asks me to come or whatever. Because I've just got to that point where I almost have to, because I'm having to really ease back on cons I do. I love getting out there because I love talking to the fans, and you know, it energizes me because during the week I'm here by myself, and it, you know, my son's grown and out, and I'm here by myself, and I'm just going Looney Tunes nuts. That's about the only time I get out of the house because I'm working so much on these things. So I like going, but you know, like my girlfriend, I'll tell you, she will sit there and listen to me tell the same story 100 times, you know, during one day of a con. Everybody always asks, "Oh, you went to this city for this con? Oh, it must be great. Did y'all go out and see this?" I'm like, no, we did not. We left. We went straight back to the hotel room, and my girlfriend knows I lay face down on the bed for at least 15 or 20 minutes just to decompress from telling the same story over and over and over again. But I don't mind it at all because these people travel from all over to come see me and see my stuff. The least I can do is try to be on, you know. I'd hate for somebody to come up and want to come see me, and then I'm just kind of, because before I broke into the business, and I was just kind of going and filling stuff out because there was no internet, and you know, you take your portfolio to the cons and all that. And I remember I had a bad experience with a few that were just kind of like sitting down hunched over their board, man, yeah. And I was just like, oh my goodness, you know, it's almost like these people hate being here, hate what they're doing. I mean, so I always try to be on. I get to know a lot of the people, and they friend me on Facebook, and we talk, and it's a good thing. But yeah, I mean, and there's times, even with getting my tables comped and hotels and all that stuff, it helps obviously with the economics, but still sometimes I have to weigh that against my workflow. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes complete sense because I'm at the stage right now where, you know, I have sponsors sometimes on episodes, and I have to weigh those decisions on, can I afford to interview somebody and what are they bringing to the table, or is there potential that they're going to be the next superstar? And it becomes complicated. And not to sound like an asshole, But, you know, last year in season 2, I did 172 interviews, and I had to unfortunately reject certain people because there just wasn't enough time. I
Right.
legitimately was pressed to do 172 interviews,
Wow.
and I think I rejected like 80 people just because some of the people I was just like, look, I don't really like your project, or I don't think your project is gonna, you know, get me viewership or bring me audience, or they hit me up at a really bad time that I was busy. And it was the idea that, well, 10 people came before you, and well, I don't want to kill myself and get a 17th, 18th, 19th interview during that month in. And so, you know, now I'm actually being very selective on, and I haven't been to a con in a while, but even forgetting about me getting comped or getting a free ticket or anything like that, I'm saying, look, how far am I going to have to travel? How crowded
Yes.
is it going to be? What is the audience like if I'm just presenting and I got a free ticket? Because I want people to recognize my name. And so I'm really making a lot of decisions where also there's certain topics I love talking about. I'm a huge Gundam fan in the anime world. So I'll talk about Gundam all day for free because I enjoy it. But if you want me to talk about a topic that I don't love as much, I'm like, even if I get a free ticket, it gets complicated. So I completely get it. And look, I want to be paid for my time because I got a lot of other things going on. I don't just do this. I have other business interests that I'm attaining to. And, you know, I weigh it against me going. And when I go back to cons, and, you know, probably we're looking maybe not this year, but next year, I'm going to be like, look, where do I want to spend my time? Because my time is worth a lot of money to me right now.
Yeah.
And, you know, if a con's willing to pay me, I'll travel halfway across the country if they're willing to pay me at this point because
You're you're more reasonable than I am. I had 2 chances to go to San Diego Comic Con. One in Texas, one in Australia, one and twice in San Diego Comic Con. And my girlfriend bugs the daylights out of me. She cosplays, you know, when we go to these cons. She wants to go to San Diego Comic Con so bad. And I told her, I said, I will go when they invent that thing from the Jetsons where I jump into a tube and then it tubes me right into my seat. And then at the end of the day will tube me right back here, you know? So I just, you know, just because once you got to think about going across the country, because when I don't know if you've seen pictures of my con booth, but my girlfriend put it all together. I'd love to take credit, but she did it. Back in the 90s, it was just like a table. It was just a table of a sketchbook and a couple of pens. And it would tear out the first page, make a table tent, write prices for sketches on it, and go to it. Now we've got books, we've got prints, we've got original art, original sketch covers. We've got the displays. We've got an electronic thing that plays my X-Files thing on loop. And it's this weird kind of thing. And I told her, I said, you know, it's not, you know, our car is, we call the car her SUV, the Conmobile. It's packed between her cosplay stuff and my stuff. There's just no way you can get anything else in there. And I'm like, how are we going to get that to California? I'm like, no. I'm like, I'm doing too many cons now. So,
I mean, look, I can be bought. There's no question about it. I completely understand that I am for sale. Now, you might not be able to afford my price, but there's no question. I am straight up honest about it. I am for sale. And
well, I may go with you there. Yeah, I mean, you know, you know, I'd go to a con far away somewhere else if the price was right. I'm not going to say I wouldn't, but
I mean, I'm not going to San Diego if they called me up for free. I'll go to New York Comic Con because I live in Connecticut.
yeah,
If they say we'll give you a free ticket, I'm there. You know, and I got to present a panel, no problem. That to me makes sense because that's a day trip. You know, that's a 2-hour car ride. You know, which isn't bad. And I'll just go for a day. I'll have a blast, and then I'll come home. But the idea is that if you want to fly me down to you know, San Diego, and you want to pay me for, because you're not paying me to be at San Diego, you're paying me for my travel. You're paying me for all the time I wait around. My favorite quote is Ronald Reagan said, I would act for free. You're paying me for all the time I wait around. And that quote, whether you like Reagan or not, is not the point. The quote is that if you're at a con and you're being paid, you're not being paid for your comic work there. You're really not. You're being paid for all the waiting around you're doing and all the BS you're being put through. And because you would do the comic, most comic people would do it for free. It's all the other stuff is why you're being paid. But I digress right there. That's a whole different discussion for a whole different day. And since we're on North Carolina talk, we might as well talk about this right here.
Oh yeah.
Your fellow North Carolinian, Ben Lacey.
Yeah, Ben's a cool guy. Ben is a cool guy, and it's like I had a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun doing this. I had a lot of fun doing this one, and every so often, because we're in the same area, I'll be at a con and he's at the con and he's got this big inflatable shark hanging over his booth. And this is my favorite thing in the world. He'll be sitting there and I'll just I'll glance over and I'll see people walking by him. Hey, so do you like sharks? And I love every bit of it. It's great.
He got me. Eduardo Guzman was just on, and then Ben was just on too. So I really like this thing, and I like your interpretation of the girl. I really do. I think you should just put that on every cover. Just every cover. Just change her shirt up, do a different color. Every cover from here on out should just have a new title and her on it, even if it's a book about something else. And he'll sell so many copies. I'm just saying, you know.
Well, it was so interesting, doing this one. It was so much fun because I love sharks. Because I was around Jaws and all that stuff. So yeah, it was up my alley, and it was kind of cool because I love drawing the females, but every so often I get a chance to work like some kind of animal or something in there. And I got to do a shark on this one. It was amazing. I'm doing one. As a matter of fact, I just walked out of the studio. I'm doing one. I won't say what yet, but I'm doing one, and it's a girl. She's got an owl, and I was drawing this owl this morning, and it looks really cool.
Yeah, and then obviously speaking about all my friends, and we, if you haven't realized, everybody, all these covers in the back are people that I've interviewed for the most part, except one, I think, which is. But that's neither here nor there. You could play the guessing game of who I haven't interviewed. But I do want to talk about Gage's book, which
yes.
That book funded, and I'm glad because I didn't know and I was a little scared, and I'm glad that Gage funded.
I was too, and I was like, "What in the world is going on here?" It was wild because it's such a good book, and he is such a nice guy, and I just was like. I was on pins and needles, and when he announced it funded, I was like, I was one time during the day I jumped up and kind of did a one-minute wave out of my drawing.
Was held, right? Everybody's breath was held, and then when he funded, everybody got to breathe again because I was like, oh my God, like I don't know what's going to happen, and I'm very honest. And Gage is such a great guy and everything, but like I was a little bit like, ooh, I don't know what's going to happen here, but I'm glad it funded because it's a great cover in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Well, and we were talking about cons earlier, and this is a good point, because I had this up on my screen, that I have a little screen that goes by with stuff I've got or done, and this was on there, and everybody was sitting there going nuts, and I was telling them about it, and all these covers I'm doing in the independents versus the mainstream, or even like the mainstream offshoot independents.
Yeah.
I have copies of the books there at the table. These people, that's the only difference. That's the only drawback I see is like some of these books I've done. I don't have copies of the books at the table, and I do all these kinds. And there's like a line of people there. Oh, I saw this book the other day. Do you have it? I'm like, well, no, but here's how you get it. And it's like, it's wild.
So to even talk about this, because this is my biggest issue with the independents right now. Versus Marvel and DC is it's just the amount that somebody has done. Yeah. Where I am a big proponent, I've been saying it a long time, is that what's dictating the future is on demand and big libraries. So with DC and Marvel, they have an abundance of content, and even with Image, they have an abundance of content. And unfortunately, and this is not a knock at indie creators, if you're producing a book and you're kickstarting it, you cannot produce 12 issues a year. I mean, you just don't have the capital, you don't have the whereabouts, you don't have that. Artist has to eat. A lot of artists are doing other things beyond that. And, you know, you can't have somebody on staff 24/7. And so that's one of the biggest drawbacks with indie right now. And it's also the idea that sometimes you just don't get your comps for a while as well, if you get comps at all. And so he's like, I really like this cover and I want to get a CGC and I want to get a signature. And then you don't have it, because I'm sure that you've been at cons where somebody has CGC with them and they're like, Gregbo, I want you to sign this book. And then it gets graded because they want that collectability. And so that's another thing. And then if you don't have the book, or somebody's just, because also you have to wait sometimes for this thing. Sometimes your printer is behind by 2 months, or sometimes, you know, somebody runs a Kickstarter, the money takes 2 weeks to clear, and then they send the books out to print, and then 6 weeks later, and then you have to wait another 2 weeks because it's just, they got to ship it out to you. You know what I mean? It's like,
I think that area, just because of the sheer popularity, I'm hoping that area gets better. In the meantime, like, I do a lot of store signings too. And, you know, they'll bring in like some of my old Zenescope stuff, or they'll bring out like some of the Dynamite stuff, or whatever. But and I just got finished doing a bunch of covers for Coffin. But when they see a cover online and the store's like, oh, okay, that's amazing, I want to get all these copies and I want to do a signing up at the store. And it's hard for them to do that under this model. You know, I don't know what the answer to that would be in the interim. I think that kind of economically.
I could tell you from an eBay side, I look at these retail packages, and some people know how to do retail really well. You know, I'm going to throw a name out, Travis Gibb. Travis gave me a retail package. It was a $35 retail package that is worth about $105 for me, which is amazing margins. And for me as a business, I can now hold on and sell those books for 18 months, and it was only like 10 books. But the risk is worth the reward. But I've seen retail packages where it's like, you're selling a book at $15 and you're going to sell to me at a retail price of $10. I don't live on $5. I can't afford it. eBay takes 13% out of that, and I'm getting raked over coals. And so I need a 50% discount minimum, if not more. And, you know, this is why I don't like dealing with, you know, Kickstarter retailers, because it is so hard for me to make money on my eBay store. And if I had a store, a brick and mortar store, or even a Shopify store, it's not much better. It might even be worse if you think about it. You have to factor in square spacage, and you also have to factor in, if I put a book on the shelf, what is it taking up from? You know what I mean? And so that's a big issue. And, you know, that's why I need a certain price range, and I'm very reluctant to, when I'm even allowed to. And also, the reason why Travis's books worked is I sell a lot of Zenescope books, and there's certain books that he has that also hit that niche where somebody's willing to buy a certain book because it hits that niche. And so I think it's a real issue, because I think that a lot of people don't understand business and the business side of a comic shop.
Without a doubt, without a doubt. Because I mean, I see people all the time who love comics, and they decide they're going to put up a comic shop, and they learn very quickly that, you know, it takes a special kind of person to do that. It takes a certain, like Liam Neeson said, I think it was Liam Neeson said, a certain set of skills. But
these tricks are not for kids.
Yeah. And, well, you know, I even thought, because when I do something for somebody, like if I do a cover for somebody, Gwen and I both are the same way. We're going to promote the ever living heck out of that thing. And I do a lot. And like I said, I mean a lot of conventions. And I promote the things I do for these creators at the conventions. There needs to be, I mean, at the very least, I would think, because I can't have like, I mean, you see all the work I'm doing and stuff. I can't have like a banner there for every person. So maybe even like little 5x7 cards or something with the cover on the front, and then on the back there'd be like some kind of like, what is that code you can scan with a phone? You know what I'm
QR code.
QR code, where they can go directly on their phone to where they can get the copies or whatever. Because, you know, these people are out there and they're clamoring for it. And some of them miss the Kickstarter, or they miss this or miss that. And they're trying to get a hold of it. And
I mean, I could tell you from my end, when people come on my show, I am now promoting the living hell out of it, where I do a lot of micro content. I then do a lot of other content. I do a whole set of micro content exclusively for Instagram.
Yeah.
And I'm doing a micro content exclusively for YouTube. I post it out on YouTube. Again, I share it into all these Facebook groups. And, you know, so when people come on my show, I mean, I'm working my ass off to push your stuff out there. And that's what I appreciate, when people actually meet me halfway and share it out themselves. It sounds crazy, but a share goes a long way, you know. But also, I'm not even in podcast form yet, and that's coming. But it's a real issue, because I know people who won't promote their own episodes they've been on my show. And I'm like, what the hell? If I'm promoting it, you could at least share it in your newsletter. And if you have a newsletter and you don't share it in your newsletter, I mean, there's a reason why certain people don't come back on. And they ask me, and I ignore them, because it's like, you didn't give a damn when you were on my show. And there are other people who are like, I'm going to promote it every single week. I get on a show, on a podcast, and I have been promoting an interview that I did 5 months ago every 2 weeks on my Friday at 7 o'clock. Every Friday at 7 o'clock on Twitter, I retweet it out. Now, I don't know exactly what that's doing, but that's at least showing effort, you know? But I think it's a problem, because I think that people don't realize that making money in comics is hard.
And yeah, I mean, it takes a special kind of animal to do this kind of thing. And, you know, I tell, because one thing I do is on Thursdays, this is the one thing I carve out each week, is I teach a class of kids at the local little fine arts center here in my hometown. I teach them how to draw comics and stuff like that. Because I always said, if I make it, because back then when I was trying to get into it, I was down here in the middle of the South with no access to internet or anything, because it wasn't around yet. I said, if I ever make it, I'm going to be there and, you know, pass on and teach to the kids. So I try to do that. But, you know, I tell them all the time, I'm like, if you think you're going to grow up and just sit in your PJs all day and draw Spider-Man and just walk out the mailbox for your latte and pick up a big fat check, you're insane. You know?
Yeah, no, I know that.
You got to hustle. And speaking of which, Gwen Dallegald, if you're watching this, get to work. We've got work to do.
and I do want to talk about this cover as well, which is Niobe, which is now a trade paperback, which is live on Kickstarter. So it was supposed to be the Indiegogo exclusive, but it became a Kickstarter cover for the trade paperback. Very cool version of Niobe. I know that Larry has been pushing it out hard for a while and been dropping it and has been wanting to use it forever. So what's the story behind this one? Because it's kind of, it's a fun interpretation of her character, his character, not her, of her, not, So it's a fun interpretation, everybody.
Well, what I ended up doing, I mean, when I saw it, I mean, I was like, I fell in love with Niobe. I love the character. I love what he's trying to do with the character. And he is so energetic. It's just, you know, they say enthusiasm is contagious. And he has it in spades. So I just fell in love with this character. And, you know, I was just sitting there and he hit me up about doing one. And I just absolutely loved it. I still love it. I'm glad you've got it up there for me to sit there and look at it for a minute. Because I enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I know he's watching right now, or he was, and he had texted me and it came across my screen. And I'm on the phone, you know, I'm doing this via my phone camera, so I can't respond. The answer is yes, but go ahead.
So to even talk about Niobe for a second,
Mhm.
obviously, Larry just put it up in the chat, so everybody who's watching it, in the chat, go check it out. If they're interested, they like this cover, they could pick it up. It's a very cool book in a lot of ways, and I really recommend that people check it out because it's a very cool thing. And I think it's origins and birthright. It's three of Niobe stuff, and obviously there's a lot of cool stuff. So if you're a trade paperback person and you want to catch up with Birthright and you want to get Origins, which just came out about 2 months ago, I recommend that's a really good way how to get it if you want all three stories. So that's something to pay attention to. And obviously, I enjoy Larry and everything he does with Niobe. So I don't think you're going to be disappointed with the story, everybody.
Yeah, he's amazing. And you said that about, him posting in the chat. Just so everybody knows, if you've put anything in the chat and think I saw it, I'm not seeing it. So don't think I'm ignoring anything. I don't see it because I'm barely able to operate what I'm doing here. So
Oh, I am completely ignoring you. No question about it. It's just the way we run. But I know a bunch of you were watching and everything, and I appreciate everybody who watches this and hearing this both on repeat and live and in podcast format. But also I do want to talk about this cover as well from Mike.
oh
And
yeah, we just finished that one.
this one too. This one too.
Oh yeah.
So what was that like? Because obviously this one is doing really well. I think it's going to break 20,000.
That one, I'll tell you, he hit me up, and I've really enjoyed collaborating with him. And he hit me up and he said, I'm thinking about doing some Roller Girl covers. And I said, oh, you are you? So, I believe we hit all cylinders with that one because, I was thrilled with doing it. I actually got to go in and do, like you can see on her little torn jersey there, it says Warriors across it. And then there's a little dinosaur and a little sweatband and all kind of little cool things that we could do with her. And then Gwen was hitting me up every day. Have you finished it yet? Have you finished it yet? Have you finished it yet? I want to color it. I want to color it. So, it was just so much. It was just a fun piece. And we've got, I won't say too much, but we got more coming up.
It's because it's also this one is in play, I think, as well.
Yes.
And,
the pterodactyl attack.
And what I like about this one, and obviously, thank God, the naughty is blurred out. I'm already in enough trouble on YouTube, and I'm pushing the line already on Facebook, guys. But what I like about it is that the nude has a different background, where it's similar.
Now,
but
I would love to take credit for that, but that is Gwen. Gwen, that was Gwen's idea, and I just have loved it. So now she's starting to do that on our covers. When it has an alternate, like a risque cover, that one's usually at night. And I think that was genius that she did that.
Because what Steph Wilson does, and I know Steph was watching for a little bit, he mixed up some of that as well, where he almost does sometimes a mirror of the naughty version, or he changes up the color a little bit, or, for instance, there's a clip where there's one bat that's looking at the girl when she's, has her clothes on, and then when all of her clothes are off, well, there's many bats looking at her. And so it makes the cover a little bit different, and it adds a little bit more of a story. And I know that John Royal did something for Merc Mag and Born of Blood, where the naughty version has a different background. And I think it's nice because it makes the cover a little bit different. And it doesn't take a hell of a lot of effort, I think, to do something like that and mix it up. So I think that's something very cool. And then the final cover I want to talk about is my friend Casey's book. And this is this. And what's fascinating about this book is that obviously this was on Kickstarter and it got picked up by Keen Spot. And this is a book that's now in stores. And
that's cool.
Yeah. What is that like for you? Because obviously going from being on, I don't know if this was on Kickstarter or you were hit up after the fact, but even still to have a book go from indie into distribution, but it's still considered indie. What is that like for you? Because
it's really cool, of course. He did hit me up before the fact. I believe, if I remember correctly, because I'm getting older and my memory's not what it used to be, but I believe he had actually said there was possibility of it, but it hadn't happened quite yet. It was on the verge. And so I did this cover, and I was just like, I had a blast. I just had a blast with this cover. I mean, it was a lot. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun.
Because I would imagine that obviously being part of a cool thing like this, where books are now coming into stores, and indie books are coming into stores, and I think that it's going to be both good and bad for indie. And I have a theory on this where I think that just like anything else, I think the free market is going to determine winners and losers.
Yep.
And I don't know what's going to be a winner or a loser, but I do think that some books are going to slay dragons and some books are going to just sort of fall flat on their face in some comic stores. But even still, people are coming into a store and they're like, I don't know who Gregbo Watson is, but I do see this book and this cover looks awesome. Who is this cover artist? Because it is massive exposure for you, more so than I even think for Casey to some degree, and even his book. Because I go into a shop and I'm like, what cover looks cool? Because I know what I go into a shop, I have $40, right? And let's say I know that I'm picking up 4 comics, and that's $25. I then say, okay, I have $15 left over. What cover looks cool that I could throw up on Instagram and I can get 15 likes on Twitter or 15 likes on Instagram? And yes, I am artificial. Deal with it, everybody. But even still, it's kind of like what cover just looks cool or makes me say, man, that's a cool piece. And then you pull it out, you put it in your lung box, and then 6 months later, that's a really cool cover still. So what is that like for you? Because I think you benefit more than Casey. Nothing against Casey.
Oh no, absolutely. Well, I mean, you know, I'd love to give you a better answer, but I don't think about it as much as probably I possibly should. I'll tell you something. I thought about it more in the I thought about a lot of this stuff more in the 90s than I have once I got back in and started back with Zenescope and then forward till now. Prior to getting back in, everything was about, because, you know, I came from, you know, I broke in about the same time Image was blowing up and everything. So during that time period, everything was about style, you know. And now it's just kind of like I said, okay, I'm gonna draw the way I'm gonna draw, and I'm not gonna really keep up with this over here or this over here or what's going on. And you know, sometimes I'm sitting at a con and someone asks me a question and I'll just be like, I don't know. But at the end of the day, I just don't think about it as much. Every once in a while, my girlfriend will say something like, isn't it cool that such and such and such and such is happening or happened? And I'm like, huh, yeah, you know, it really is. And I can enjoy it. But I'm jumping back and forth on covers and doing so much that it's hard really to sit down and think about that.
Yeah, see, I'm so different. I am so different at this point where obviously I'm always looking at my stock and my worth and my clout jumping up. And I understand, like, I'm like, this is kind of cool that I'm interviewing this person and this person and this person and that person, and this is happening. And then even when I get into an area that or the next level, for lack of a better word, I'm like, okay, I'm getting somewhere. And so for me, it's like I'm very well aware.
Well, there's two times. Well, there's several times, but two of the ones that just popped into my mind when you were talking about it. One was I did a sketch cover for Stan Lee, and I'd posted it up, and people liked it, and went through its normal cycle of likes and all that stuff. And I was like, oh, okay. Then I kind of didn't think about it for a while. About 2 months later, Stan posts it, and it's on all his social media. And let's face it, it's Stan Lee. So I'm sitting on the couch one night with my girlfriend, and you know, we're sitting there watching something on TV, and all of a sudden my phone's going off, and it sounded like I've been attacked by R2-D2. You know, my phone beep, boop, boop, beep, boop, you know. And I look down, and I'm like, why are people reposting this? I did this 2 months ago. And then all of a sudden I looked closer, and it was Stan that had blasted it out to Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. And for like a week, whoosh, I mean, it was like somebody turned on the fire hose, and I was like, okay, this is pretty freaking cool. The other one was, this is back when the TV show The Office was still running. You know, it was the last, for those who want to check it out, it was the last season's Halloween episode. My girlfriend and I are sitting on the couch, been a long day. We're sitting there watching The Office. All of a sudden, I jumped up and I hit pause. I'm like, look at that. My artwork is all through that episode. They had taken this witch I had done, and they had used it to make this put the wart on the witch thing, you know, that they were doing in The Office. And it was like so freaking cool because I was like, oh my goodness, that's cool. So, you know, my art's on The Office. You know, I see something every once in a while, and I kind of, you know, I did some Guardians of the Galaxy cards and stuff for Marvel. And when I was doing it, you know, the first one I did a Thor. And my son was still here at the time. And I was like, hey, did you see the Thor I did? Did you see the Thor I'm working on? Yes, Dad. We all know you did a Thor. You know. So after a while, I was kind of like, yeah, okay. You know, so I went through the rest of the cards, didn't think anything about it. And then they like coincided with the movie or whatever. So when I went to see the movie, I'm sitting there in the movie theater. I'm like, just in the middle of the movie, I'm sitting there going, huh, this is pretty cool. You know? I mean, every once in a while, something like that hits me, but not like it used to, because I kind of have to. I gotten to a point where for artistic vision's sake and creativity and just be able to get the stuff done, I kind of stay, you know, kind of like the horse with the blinders. You know, I kind of and go.
Yeah, no, I am still like when I'm speaking to like my childhood heroes, especially like voice actors and all that stuff. I'm like, this is kind of cool. Like, this is kind of weird. Like, this is like, how the hell did I get here? Is like how I ask. And I'm like, I should not be doing this. And then like, it's so interesting. And I'm like doing it from my house. And it's just like, it's so bizarre to me. And it doesn't wear off. Like, it still doesn't wear off with a lot of people. Like when I did EBAS, like, I'm like, oh, this is like legit. And
Yeah.
it doesn't wear off. Or like when I interviewed Larry Welts, I'm like, oh snap, like, or Hart Fisher, it was like, I should not be doing this, and I am enamored, and like, I don't know if it'll ever wear off. Or when I sold out an entire panel room and people were rejected from my panel, I'm like, oh, this is what it looks like. So it's very cool for me. But I do want to back out of talking about your cover work per se, and I actually am curious, in your opinion, what makes a good cover? Because obviously you do a lot of cover work and you've done interior work, but covers sell books. I think it's crystal clear in Casey Valker's position. I think that cover is definitely selling that book in a lot of ways. And so what makes a good cover work? And and consequently, and you don't have to answer this question, what makes a bad cover?
You know, there's a lot of directions I can go, but I'm gonna kind of boil it down to like probably the most important thing. It's when I do a cover, I try to think to myself, I have to take myself out of being the artist who's drawing it for a minute and think about that kid who would walk into a comic shop, me when I was younger. What would when I'm seeing this on a wall? Because it's competing for so many different other things. You know, it's just like a wall of art. And I'm like, you know, I think good design, good layout, obviously, good execution. But at the end of the day, it's like, what makes this exciting? You know, what's going to get somebody to buy it? There's an old term like in wrestling or stuff. What puts butts in seats? You know, and you know, that's what I try to think about. You know, when I'm doing it, and I'm trying to think about what I would like and what I would want to buy. You know, that's probably the best thing I could say. Now in terms of a bad cover, a cover that has absolutely nothing to do with the interior of the book whatsoever. I like to know. Now, sometimes I don't get the opportunity to know because I'm at an earlier stage sometimes. Maybe the script for the book isn't finished or whatnot, and they just kind of give me a general idea. But I like to know a little bit about what the book's about so I can kind of be a little playful, you know, and be a little playful with the idea of the book and kind of make it interesting. If it has nothing to do with the book whatsoever and poor execution and, you know, or I'm one of those, I don't know if you've noticed, but if you look at my covers, I try to go really close in on the characters, you know, kind of make the character the star, kind of make the character the big element. Making the character like really, 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 really small on the cover, I think is not really a great idea. I mean, those are just some of the stuff that I try to stay away from.
No. This is fascinating because I have a slightly different opinion, and I love Zenescope covers with sexy girls, and sometimes they don't have anything to do with the cover and the book, or they obviously have something to do with the cover, but you know sometimes Zenescope is doing a polka cosplay thing. Those covers by Senko Minaki have nothing to do with the book, but they are amazing pieces of art and they're awesome covers. And so I am willing to accept because they're just characters from Zenescope. And so I am perfectly fine with that. But I also, at this point with Zenescope, when they do covers like that, I don't really care because I'm not buying the art versus the idea that if I'm to pick up, you know, Casey's book, and the only reason why I'm not saying it is because I'm going to get the name wrong and I don't want to embarrass myself. But if I'm to pick up this book, it needs to have something to do with the book. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I don't know anything. I'm expecting this character and this type of artwork and this character to carry a sword. If she shoots with a shotgun and there's a sword on the book, I'm going to feel gypped and robbed.
Yeah. Well, I'm with you though. I'm with you though on the cosplay covers. That's how Gwen and I got hooked up, is because we did a cover for Ryan Kincaid's Con Artists, and you know, we do the cosplay covers there, and I think the cosplay covers are awesome. I actually like too, and I haven't had a chance to do one of these yet, but I would love to do one like this. Is those breakfast cereal covers that they did? I thought that was kind of cool.
Oh, Zenescope, the serial covers. Oh my God, they are fantastic. They are fantastic covers.
I don't know if you've seen this yet, but if you haven't, check it out. It's in my Facebook photos somewhere. This wasn't a cover. I would have loved it to have been because I thought it was a cool idea, but I ended up, it's my Halloween print every year when I go to the cons around Halloween.
I know which one you're talking about, but continue.
You know which one I'm talking about the breakfast cereal, the monsters. There's what was it? Bride of Frankenberry, Countess Chocula, and Blueberry, because Blueberry fits for anybody. But
oh no. Zenescope did a really good job with those Paul Greens. Yeah. And then I have a few of them, and then I sold a bunch of them because they're worth good money. The ZenBox ones are worth good money. I mean, like real good money, like $100 a piece money, which is crazy. But I digress. Where we're smart on them, and then now Zenescope is doing, I think they're doing video games this year.
Yeah.
Where I think Chazus, maybe it's not Chazus, but they're doing Mario Van Helsing. Which is really cool. You got like a flying like raccoon Mario just as Van Helsing with big breasts. It's an odd cover that should not work. And that's tomorrow night, guys. So buy from Zenescope. $100 gets you a medal and a very cool cover, limited to 200. And this is where I'm going to be poor. But I digress right there. But yeah, no. It's something special, you know. Maybe on my book, I'll let you do serial covers.
See, there you go.
Yeah. You might not say yes once I tell you my project off air. A bunch of people know it, and it's going to be hilarious. But I digress. But I do want to give you a chance to self-promote because we've been speaking for like an hour and a half and change. And
Oh wow, it doesn't feel like that. Yeah.
well, I work hard and I'm trying to keep it as interesting as humanly possible. And I appreciate everybody watching this, who's watched it so far. And I
You should have
appreciate
had some subtitles down below for my southern accent.
you know, they can deal with it if they can handle Eduardo Guzman, who is from Mexico,
Yeah.
and he spoke perfectly fine, and he sounded just as good as you sound, which is
okay.
wonderful. Then everybody can adjust, is all I'm going to say. But I do want to give you an opportunity to promote yourself. Where can people find you? Where can people bother you? Where can people make it so that you don't get any sleep because you're doing all the work for them? Where can people pick up commissions? Where can people find you at cons? Where can people just send you money without you having to do work so you can take a day off? You know, all that kind of stuff.
That would be so nice. No, I guess, Facebook, obviously, Gregbo on Facebook, Gregbo Watson on Facebook is my fan page. Just Gregbo on Facebook is just like my regular page, and I'll add you to both. I don't have any problem with that. Then let's see, Instagram is just Gregbo. Twitter is a cesspool, but I'm still on there. It's at Wicked Gregbo. We put something up there the other day, and Gwen hit me back because got one like, or that Gwen had put up, and she said, "Oh, I got a like," and it was me. She was, "Thank you for my one like on on Twitter." I'm like, Twitter's a cesspool. What can you do? But I do cons all up and down, here in the Southeast. Usually from Virginia down into Georgia, North Carolina, Tennessee, South Carolina, obviously. Every once in a while we venture out. We did one in Arkansas, Little Rock, because my girlfriend wanted to go through Graceland. So, yeah. And, other than that, I mean, check out, those social media feeds, and you can get in touch with me there about, possibly, doing a cover or getting a commission or anything like that.
Yeah, and then as far as I'm concerned, and I'm going to keep saying it, you got to support indie. And the way you do that is you buy people's books, and in particular at cons, you should buy people's books from there because that's the way that you support artists. Furthermore, obviously, you should hire artists when you need them. Hire Gregbo for a cover. Hit him up if you want it. I don't think you will go bad, and that can all be worked out between you and whoever wants to hire you. And also, though, even going further, obviously following people on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, that stuff matters. Sharing out posts that people
it really does.
It is a big deal, and it's free. So that's something that you should be doing. And so that's very helpful. And as far as I'm concerned, obviously use BCW supplies, code Pop Anime Comics, 10% off your entire order. Bags and boards matters, guys. It protects your comics. And well, they're expensive right now. So use that code. They are backlogged, unfortunately. So you're going to have to wait. And so keep that in mind, but save yourself 10%. And then also I do have my t-shirt that's up there, which is right here. So that's on Redbubble, 16 different colors. So it's making fun of Taco Bell, Gundam, most interesting man in the world. And you can get it in any color you want it to be in. So go buy my shirt, guys. And then you can also pick up these bad boys. They were just sold up at Wizard World Philadelphia with my friend DJ Croft, who was a cosplay guest. I have about 40 of these left. They're up on my eBay store, so you can go check that out. And on that note, I'm going to give you the final word.
Well, cool, man. I mean, it was a pleasure to come in here and talk with you. Like I said, it doesn't seem like, what do you say, it was an hour and a half? It seems like we've been talking about 20 minutes.
Almost hour 40 minutes, everybody. But
I told you I could talk.
I knew it.
I knew you talking. The tricks to get me to shut up.
Hey, I knew you could talk, but on that point, everybody, I believe that is a wrap, everybody.